Hi, it's Mark Donegan with the Marketing Execution Podcast. Most teams fail because trust comes last, not first. Patrick Lencioni proves the opposite. Without psychological safety, your team is just individuals protecting themselves. To address this episode tackles the 5 dysfunctions that kill team performance and company growth. From my own experience, I've watched countless startups crumble from internal friction rather than market forces. Now, here's my conversation on building teams that actually execute.
Tune in, listen up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, growing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
So Mark, I've been sitting with this idea all week, and I think it might actually change how I think about building teams. You ever have one of those concepts that just sticks with you?
Oh, I love when that happens. What's on your mind?
So I was reading about Patrick Lencioni's work on team dysfunction, and here's what got me. He says the foundation of everything, like everything, is trust, but not the kind of trust we usually talk about.
Okay, you got to unpack that for me because trust is one of those words that gets thrown around so much, it almost loses meaning.
Right, that's exactly it. So Lencioni makes this distinction that I think is really important. He's not talking about trusting someone to do their job. He's talking about feeling safe around them, like psychologically safe enough to admit when you screwed up or share a weird idea without worrying they're going to use it against you.
That's a huge difference, actually, because I've seen so many startup teams where everyone's technically competent, they trust each other to ship code or close deals, but there's this underlying tension. Nobody wants to be the first to say they don't understand something.
Yes. And here's the thing that really hit me. He says without that kind of trust, you don't actually have a team. You have a group of individuals protecting their own interests.
Yeah, I once heard of a company that had this exact problem. Really talented people, like genuinely smart founders. But every meeting felt like a chess match. Everyone was positioning, nobody was collaborating, and the business suffered because problems just festered. Nobody wanted to admit mistakes because they didn't feel safe.
So how do you actually build that kind of trust? Because you can't just tell people to feel safe, right?
No, you definitely can't mandate it. But Lencioni has this approach that I think is brilliant in its simplicity. He says the leader has to go first. You have to be the one who's vulnerable. Share something uncomfortable, admit a past failure, whatever it is. You're basically signaling to everyone else that it's okay to be human here.
But that takes guts, though.
It does, but vulnerability isn't weakness in this context. It's actually a power move. When you're secure enough to admit your flaws, it creates permission for everyone else. And suddenly, you've got a team that can actually talk about real problems instead of dancing around them.
Okay, so let's say you've got that foundation of trust. What comes next?
So this is where it gets really practical for founders. And honestly, this is why I love talking about this stuff on the Marketing Execution Podcast. The second thing Lencioni identifies is the lack of healthy disagreement. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because most people think conflict is bad, but fake harmony is actually worse than productive conflict. If everyone's just nodding along in meetings, you're not getting the best ideas. You're getting the safest ideas, the ones nobody will argue with.
Oh man, I've been in those meetings where you walk out and everyone's like, great meeting. And then in the hallway, it's a completely different conversation.
The hallway conversation. That's where the real opinions live. And Lencioni's point is you need to bring that hallway conversation into the meeting. You need people comfortable enough to disagree, to push back, to say, I think that's a terrible idea, and here's why.
But that only works if you've got the trust piece first.
Exactly. See how it builds? Trust enables conflict. Because if I trust you, I know when you push back on my idea, you're not attacking me personally. You're trying to make the idea better. You're trying to help the team win.
Ooh, got it. So what's the third piece? Because I'm guessing it's not just trust and conflict and then you're done.
No, there's a really important step after conflict, which is unity. And this is where a lot of teams fall apart. You have the debate, maybe it gets heated, and then a decision gets made, but some people walk out still holding on to their original position. They're like, well, I didn't agree with that, so I'm not really going to commit to it.
That's so toxic, but yeah, it really
Happens, and it undermines everything. Lencioni says once a decision is made, everyone has to leave that room presenting a united front, even if you argued against it, even if you still think it's wrong, because you had your chance to make your case, the team decided, and now you have to commit.
How do you enforce that though? Like, how do you know if someone's secretly undermining the decision?
One thing I've seen work really well is requiring each team member to personally communicate the decision to their direct reports. Not an email, not a Slack message, but like actually talking to people and answering questions. Because if you have to explain and defend the decision out loud, you're going to make sure you actually understand it and buy into it.
That's clever. You're basically making them accountable by putting the reputation on the line.
Exactly. And that leads directly into the fourth dysfunction, which is fear of accountability. This is where things get really uncomfortable because holding teammates accountable means having hard conversations. It means telling someone, hey, your work isn't cutting it, or your attitude in that meeting was a problem.
Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody. And Lencioni says that's because we're afraid of hurting each other. We confuse being nice with being kind. But here's the thing, failing to give someone honest feedback isn't kind. It's actually cruel because you're robbing them of the chance to improve.
I've definitely been guilty of that, just hoping a problem would fix itself instead of addressing it directly.
We all have. But the best teams I've seen have this culture where feedback flows in every direction, not just from the leader down, but peer to peer. And that's actually more powerful because criticism from a teammate hits different than criticism from your boss.
That's fascinating. Let's pivot for a second and talk about what this means for a founder who's building their first real team. Like maybe they've got 5 or 6 people and they're trying to figure out how all of this works.
You know, that's actually where this stuff gets really interesting. Because when you're at that size, 5 or 6 people, you're at this inflection point where the stakes were completely different.
What do you mean by that?
So think about it this way. When it's just you and maybe a co-founder, you can kind of brute force your way through problems. You're in the same room, you're finishing each other's sentences, you know what the other person is thinking before they say it.
Yeah, there's almost no communication overhead.
Exactly. But the moment you add that third, fourth, fifth person, suddenly you've got all these new relationships to manage. And the complexity doesn't grow linearly, it grows exponentially. Every new person adds multiple new connection points.
I've definitely felt that. You go from this tight-knit thing to suddenly feeling like you're herding cats.
And that's why Lencioni's framework matters so much at this stage, because you're basically setting the DNA of your company culture. The habits you form with those first 5 or 6 people, those are going to echo through every hire you make after that.
Okay, but let me push back on something because I've heard founders say, look, we don't have time for team building exercises. We're trying to survive. We've got 3 months of runway and we need to ship product.
Oh, I hear that all the time, and I get it, I really do. But the time you spend building trust now is actually an investment that pays dividends every single day. I know of a company that skipped all this stuff. They had brilliant engineers, great product instincts, but every decision turned into a 2-week debate because nobody felt safe enough to commit.
Because they were all protecting their own positions, right?
Right. And meanwhile, their competitor, who had a slightly worse product, but a team that could actually make decisions together, they were shipping updates every week. Guess who won?
So you're saying that dysfunction itself becomes the bottleneck.
The dysfunction is the bottleneck. And at a small team size, you can't hide from it. There's nowhere for the problems to go. They just sit there in the room with you.
So what's the first thing a founder should actually do? Like tomorrow morning, they walk into the office. What's step 1?
Okay, so Lencioni has this really simple exercise, and I know it sounds almost too basic, but bear with me. Have everyone share something personal, not work stuff, something about their childhood, a goal they have outside of work, whatever. And here's the key. You go first.
Wait, hang on. You're telling me the founder of a SaaS company should sit down and talk about their favorite childhood memory?
I know how it sounds, but think about what you're actually doing. You're signaling that this is a space where people can be human, where they don't have to be perfect all the time. And that signal, coming from the person with the most power in the room, that's huge.
Because if the CEO can admit to being imperfect, then everyone else has permission to do the same. That's clever. And suddenly, you've got a team that can actually talk about the real problems instead of dancing around them.
And look, this doesn't mean you're going to be holding hands and singing songs every morning. It's just about creating enough psychological safety that when someone screws up, they tell you immediately instead of hiding it for 3 weeks.
Which at a startup could be the difference between pivoting in time and running out of money.
Exactly. The cost of hidden problems at a small company is enormous. You don't have the buffer that big companies have.
Okay, so we've got trust as the foundation. We've talked about how healthy disagreement matters and how unity after decisions is crucial, but I'm curious about something. How do you actually hold people accountable when you're all basically peers, like there's no HR department to hide behind?
That's the hardest part, honestly. Because you're right, at 5 or 6 people, everyone knows everyone. Their relationships are personal. And telling your friend that their work isn't cutting it, that's brutal.
It feels like a betrayal almost.
It does. But here's the mindset shift that changed everything for me. Failing to give someone honest feedback is like robbing them of the chance to get better. And when your whole team understands that, when everyone agrees that we give each other hard feedback because we care about each other, suddenly those conversations become a lot easier to have.
That's a powerful reframe. So we've covered the why behind all of this. The stakes for smart teams, the investment mindset, the accountability piece. I'm thinking our listeners are probably ready to get tactical. What does this actually look like in practice, week by week?
Okay, so here's what I tell every founder I work with. Week 1, you're doing what I call the trust sprint, and it's simpler than you think.
Walk me through it.
Monday morning, you block 30 minutes. That's it. You sit down with your team and you do a round robin. Everyone shares one thing they're struggling with right now. Could be work, could be personal, doesn't matter. And you always go first. That's non-negotiable. You set the tone. If you share something surface level, everyone else will too. If you go deeper, they'll follow.
So what does deeper look like? Like, are we talking childhood trauma here or?
No, nothing that heavy. I mean something like, hey, I've been second guessing our pricing strategy and it's keeping me up at night. Or I snapped at my kid this morning and I feel terrible about it.
Oh, like the real stuff, human stuff.
Exactly. And here's what's wild. I watched the team do this for 3 weeks straight. By week 4, their stand-up meetings got 40% shorter.
Wait, how does sharing personal stuff speed up stand-ups?
Because people stopped hiding problems. Before, someone would hit a blocker and sit on it for 2 days trying to fix it alone. After the trust sprint, they'd flag it immediately. No shame attached.
That's huge. I've seen so many teams where hiding problems is just a default mode.
And it kills you at small scale. You don't have the runway to waste 2 days on something a teammate could solve in 20 minutes.
Okay, so that's week 1. What about the disagreement piece? How do you actually get people comfortable arguing with each other?
There was actually this practice they called Red Team Thursdays. Every Thursday, someone would present an idea and everyone else's job was to poke holes in it.
Oh, so you're making disagreement the expectation.
That's it. You're removing the social cost. Because normally when you push back on someone's idea, there's this awkward moment. Are they going to be offended? Is this going to hurt our relationship?
But if it's literally your assignment to disagree, then it's not personal anymore. It's just the game you're playing that day. I love that framing. It's like you're giving people permission slips to be honest.
Permission slips. I'm stealing that. But yeah, that's exactly right. And here's the tactical part. You need ground rules. Write them down, put them on the wall. For example, rule 1, attack the idea, not the person. Rule 2, if you disagree, you have to offer an alternative. Rule 3, the person who proposed the idea gets final word on whether to incorporate feedback.
That third one is interesting. So you're protecting the proposer from death by committee.
Right, because otherwise you get this watered down compromise that nobody actually believes in. The proposer owns it. They listen to everything, then they decide.
Okay, so we've got trust sprints, we've got Red Team Thursdays. What about after a decision is made? How do you keep everyone rowing in the same direction?
This is challenging. They have a great debate, they make a decision, and then half the team walks out still thinking their way was better, and they undermine it. Maybe not on purpose, but it's subtle. They're not actively sabotaging, but they're not championing it either. And in a small team, that lukewarm energy is poison. So what's the fix? Well, after every major decision, each person has to send a voice memo to their direct reports explaining the decision and why they supported it.
Voice memo specifically.
Yeah, because you can't hide behind corporate speak in a voice memo. Your tone comes through, your conviction comes through. If you're faking it, people can tell.
That's brutal. In a good way.
It's accountability baked into the process. You can't just nod along in the meeting and then roll your eyes later. You have to actually internalize the decision enough to sell it.
And I bet that changes how people show up in the meeting itself.
Completely, because now you're thinking, I'm going to have to explain this to my team in 2 hours. So you'd better make sure you understand it. You'd better make sure your concerns get heard. You're basically designing systems that make accountability automatic.
This is gold, Mark. We've covered a lot of ground today. Can you pull it all together for us? Like, if someone's been listening to this whole conversation, what are the key things they should walk away with?
All right, let me bring this all together. We started with Patrick Lencioni's core insight that real teams are built on psychological safety. You need people who feel safe enough to admit mistakes and share weird ideas without fear. From there, we talked about how that trust enables healthy conflict. You want the hallway conversation happening in the actual meeting where people push back on ideas because they want the team to win. Then comes unity. Once a decision is made, everyone commits fully, even if they argued against it. And finally, accountability. You build systems that make honest feedback automatic, so you're not relying on willpower alone. The key for small teams is that you don't have time to let dysfunction fester. Every hidden problem costs you runway you can't afford to lose.
Mark, after all of that, what's the one thing you really hope people don't forget?
The founder who goes first wins. Not first to market, not first to raise money, first to be vulnerable, first to admit they don't have all the answers. Because that single act of courage creates permission for your entire team to be human. And a team of humans who trust each other will outperform a team of brilliant individuals protecting themselves every single time. So tomorrow morning, share something real. That's where it all starts. The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the Marketing Execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.